this is your first exposure to N4, some of the terminology that we use is not going to be familiar to you at all. So I'd like to use this video to kind of explain some of the terms that we're going to encounter right off the bat that make absolutely no sense to normal people. And the four terms that I want to talk about are hosts, platforms, stations, and passphrases. Those terms are going to come up over and over again, and they're going to come up right away in the course. So I don't want to just say, okay, go to this host and open the platform. We're going to look at the station. I want you to understand kind of a little bit about what those things are. So the first term we'll start with is the host. Now, a host is simply anything that has N4 installed on it. So if you install N4 on your computer is a host. A Jace, which is Tritium's hardware that would go in a building someplace, is a host. A server running N4 is a host. When N4 is installed on a host, it generates a host ID. A host ID is a unique identifier that's tied to that host running N4. The host ID identifies the host on Tritium's licensing server, and it's directly tied to the license. So when you install N4, you get a host ID, and then you have to purchase a license. The next term we're going to talk about is the platform. The platform is a set of tools that allows us to configure the host. So when you order a Jace from the factory, it comes with a platform connection. It doesn't have anything else, just a platform connection, and we need to go into it and install the software, install the operating system, install whatever it is that we want to run on that particular Jace, and we do that through the platform. We're going to start with a platform connection in our first lab, so you'll get exposed to the platform right away. The next term is station. A station is typically what you are accessing when you're accessing a job site, or when you're accessing a building, or when you're accessing a school, and you're looking at N4 in a browser. You are looking at the station. The station has our graphics, it has our integration, it has schedules and alarms and trending. That's all part of the station. The station is something that we build. You may not build a station, but when you purchase a Jace from the factory, or when you install N4 on your computer, it doesn't come with a station. So somebody has to build the station. In this class, I have pre-built a station that we're going to use, so you won't have to start completely from scratch. When you access the platform, you can only get to it from Workbench or the software. You cannot get to the platform from a web browser. A station can be accessed either with Workbench or through a browser. Next, we come to the passphrase. Simply put, a passphrase is used to encrypt sensitive data. It basically just adds an extra password that we need to know. There are two distinct, different areas where you're going to use passphrases. The first passphrase that you'll encounter is in Workbench itself. So when you install N4 for the very first time on a computer, it asks you to come up with a passphrase. That passphrase is used to encrypt stations that are not running on the computer. So when you create a new station on your computer and you want to give it to someone else, they're going to need to know your passphrase. That passphrase encrypts stations that aren't running, and that is a term known as stations at rest. If you know the passphrase on the computer that you're working on, you can change it in the platform tools for your computer. If you don't know the passphrase on the computer that you're working on, if you installed it and then forgot what it was, you can go into the Windows registry and there's a key that you can delete. We're not going to go over that in this class, but there is a way to reset the passphrase on a computer. The second and the most important passphrase is the passphrase that we use to encrypt the SD-RAM card on the Jace itself. That passphrase cannot be reset. So if you don't know it, the only way to fix that is to take the Jace back to a factory state, which means it's going to wipe out all the information on the Jace, the station, everything. Knowing what the passphrase is on the Jace is crucial. That passphrase needs to be part of the closeout documents on a job so that you know what it is. Extremely, extremely important. Now, I've mentioned Workbench a couple of times. Workbench or Workplace is the software tool. It's basically what we refer to as N4. Depending on the version that you're using, you might see Workplace, you might see Workbench. I will refer to it as Workbench because that's what we've been calling it for years. But if you look at it actually and open it up, it's going to say Workplace. So we use Workbench to access platforms and stations on different hosts. Remember, a host is just where the software is installed. Stations don't run in Workbench. So if I make a connection to a station with Workbench, I'm not hurting anything. The stations are running independently of Workbench. Workbench is just a tool. The first lab that we're going to do, and the next video, is going to take us on a guided tour of Workbench.